This is Remote Ruby.
Have you any remote idea to the meaning of the word?
Hey.
Yo.
They say the second recording is best recording.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that very well doing screencasts. I was trying to do one today. I'll end up not doing it and just redo it completely from scratch tomorrow, and it'll be a ton better.
Yeah. And if you want to hear what was so egregious that we said, you can sign up for our OnlyFans account.
Yeah.
To get the risque drops.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and cover the topics that we did already cover that were important because I'm still triggered by them. Andrew and his son's jersey, which...
Yes, I'm wearing a Suns jersey. I am rallying the Valley.
Okay.
An aggressive subtweeting of Jason.
Yeah. It's not even so much the Suns jersey. I'm not offended by opposing fans who wake up, choose violence, but don't even have the decency to tag me.
Yeah, I did that. But it led to you texting me.
It did.
I was like, sweet, I get to talk to Jason.
Were you trying to pull me like into a conversation?
No, I wasn't, but I was thrilled with the result. Because then I got to ask you why there are umpires in basketball.
To which I responded, that's a very good question.
Yep. And that was my answer.
I am sitting around the table with some of my dear friends eating dinner. A dinner I made, by the way, with a bourbon glazed burger with caramelized onions, hand cut French fries. It was pretty intense.
Are you going to make this for us at RailsConf or
Yes.
what?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring my kitchen.
We should do that during our talk.
Y'all can't see this, but I literally got chills when you mentioned the caramel.
It was a recipe I found on the Chunky Chef, which I'm sad that never been taken. But yeah, it was good. It was a good time until about 8:00 Central when Andrew chat on my Grizzlies team. I believe the tweet said, "Everyone who likes the Grizzlies sucks, and I can't be friends with them. I am basketball god." That.
I love that you included that little last bit there. No, I think what I actually said was it's a great day to not be a Grizzlies fan because I heard that I was in the Suns arena before the game and someone beside it's called the Footprint Arena. And what
What is the Footprint Arena?
I don't know. I'm assuming it's like a shoe company. Can you look that up? Someone look that up.
I'm on it.
Well, and someone beside me was like, yeah, the Grizzlies lost yesterday. There's only one person in this entire earth that I know the team that they like, and that is Jason Charnes. And I know that Jason likes the Grizzlies. And so I tweeted, there was like this immediate like feeling of like, I can create chaos. And as an agent of chaos, I need to act now. So I subtweeted Jason. Yeah, I thought it was a fire tweet. Honestly, I didn't even close the Twitter app. I was like, Jason will feel this in the force. And a few minutes later, like clockwork, Jason just replied. And then he texted me and it was a good time. It was a great day to be a Suns fan because we won.
Yeah, it's probably a good day to be a Suns fan. Not a good weekend to be a Grizzlies fan, but tomorrow night I will be there. It's the playoffs, in case anyone's listening and like, why do we care about basketball so much right now? It's playoff season.
Yes.
Chris is a Grizzlies fan. He has a shirt. So
I do now.
I got a present for you.
That was a really good game that we went to, though.
Curious, can you remind me who we beat that night?
No, you don't know.
Yeah, we should subtweet about it.
I'll tweet about it.
You told me that if I remember our episode correctly, that the Suns put in every backup person that they had and the Grizzlies played their full squad, right? That's what you said?
Well, you got that completely backwards, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't there. I don't know. I would have been upset.
Yeah. You would have just burned your jersey in the middle of the arena.
Yeah.
Ours is called the FedEx Forum. So the Footprint Center, you call it Footprint Arena, wrong. Footprint Center, formerly America West Arena, U.S. Airways Center, formerly Talking Stick Resort Arena, formerly Phoenix Suns Arena, is a multi-purpose arena in Phoenix, and I don't know about the name.
Yeah, I also glanced on here, and I don't see why that's the name either. So who knows?
On July 16th, 2021, it was announced that Gilbert,
The city?
yes, Gilbert-based material science company Footprint,
Ah, there we go.
secured the arena naming rights.
There we go. Yeah. I subtweeted Jason. It was a good time. I enjoyed it.
We talked about this a little bit when we recorded our first time. I want to shout out Andrew Atkinson, who is a fellow NBA fan of the team we're actually playing right now. It is much nicer when it comes to sports friendships than you are.
Yes. I am, in a word, obnoxious.
I love it. You were the highlight of my trip to DC, that and all my other coworkers. But you really stood out in certain moments.
Did I? I don't know. That sounds like a bad thing.
No, we got all kinds of topics for the podcast we came up with at the retreat.
Yeah, we did. We were brainstorming.
You want to mention some of them on air?
Oh boy.
Chris, you own a business, right? Nah, maybe not. Let's just say the word NFT was thrown in there.
I see.
We forgot to tell you, Chris, but we're actually going to mint the first episode of Remote Ruby and sell it as an NFT.
I mean, I'm surprised that Pody is not pivoting entirely to selling NFTs for people. Why sell content when you can sell NFTs?
I forgot that I promised Andrew I'd make 4 NFTs and he was going to mint them, whatever the hell that means.
Yep.
So
He's going to write them down on a 3x5 index card and put them somewhere safe.
Yeah,
I'm gonna-
exactly. I'm going to draw them by hand.
I'm going to do this. We're going to retire by the end of this week.
Oh, yeah.
By the time this next episode airs, we'll be millionaires.
We won't
I'll
even
be,
need to air the next episode, right? We'll just be on the beach somewhere.
I'll go full violence mode and just tweet them out that we're selling them.
I don't see them because I have all those keywords muted on Twitter.
Nice.
So
I'll use the ways to get around them.
you put like the space and stuff, or use the cross instead of the T for
I
anything.
use like a fancy F. Yes. So there was some annoyance this morning and some potential cause for alarm this weekend when we discovered that Heroku, well, Travis CI, but that doesn't really pertain to us, but Heroku and GitHub had a little oopsie and they revoked all their OAuth tokens and stuff and then disabled all their integration platforms. And that was the cool part, because if you've ever used Heroku before, you know that deploying is as simple as merging to main. And yeah, so that's borked and people are like, what's going on? When's it going to get fixed? And our fearless leader, Jamie, said that it does not appear that it's going to be fixed anytime soon. So people are just like, blah.
Are you still able to deploy and stuff?
Yeah, it's like the old
man
school
line,
way.
freaking boomer.
Oh my god.
You got to print off the code and mail it to them?
Yeah, we have
And on punch cards. Yeah, yeah.
Look
I
at
know what
us.
punch cards are.
Yeah, boomer. We have to get deploy to Heroku, which is like what I used to do, like pre-pipelines, right? Where
Like get push Heroku main
Yeah.
or whatever?
Sorry, I'm interrupting you because I just realized something, and if I don't say it now, I'm going to forget completely. Now that we've moved our test suite off of Heroku CI to GitHub Actions, now we can set up a GitHub action that when tests pass on main, it automatically promotes. Oh my God, I'm going to write that later. Okay, cool.
that sounds great. Because that was the other thing is, so yes, we use pipeline. So we'd go to staging from main and then manually like click a button to deploy to production. But we run system test, jest test, a custom danger file, Breakman, another handful of like things in GitHub Actions. But our RSpec tests still run on Heroku CI, which was a notification from GitHub. Whenever there was a merge, it would run the specs on main. We lost that. So we had to this morning also migrate our RSpec test off Heroku CI onto a GitHub action. But it only took Andrea and I like 30 minutes, but it was like we used Knapsack Pro because we parallelized our test. And then it was like our tests running a little bit slower because we run our tests against like very powerful dynos in Heroku. And so we have a little bit of speed difference now and we feel it. And it's
A little
fine.
speed difference.
Before we were running 16 dynos for specs. I'm running 20 nodes. I don't remember what they call them in GitHub, but it's not like the end of the world. It's just annoying. I'm still not entirely sure. I guess somebody stole some tokens, and then so the safest thing was just to be like, later.
Yeah. So here's what happened. On April 12th, GitHub began an investigation that realized an attacker was abusing stolen OAuth user tokens issued to two third-party OAuth integrators, Heroku and Travis CI, to download data from dozens of orgs, including NPM. So NPM was compromised, basically. That's what they're basically saying without saying it. The applications these integrators used were used by GitHub users, including GitHub itself. We do not believe the attacker obtained these tokens via compromise of GitHub or its systems because the tokens in questions are not stored by GitHub in their original usable formats. So it sounds like GitHub is saying, yo, this wasn't our fault. It sounds like they're saying this is Heroku and Travis CI's fault. So when they analyzed the behavior of the threat actor and they suggested that they were mining private repo contents, which if you're one of those,
they're making NFTs of it.
Oh yeah. If you're one of those people who has a private GitHub repository and feels that it's safe at that point to include private keys in it, you're so wrong. And you make me angry because I've experienced this before.
When I first got into development, I did this. I had a private repo and I had some keys in it. I didn't do anything with it. And then one day I had a $20,000 AWS bill because somebody somehow got a hold of my private repo, grabbed my keys, and started mining Bitcoin on AWS.
I've also done this before as a newer developer, and that's fine. Like, we make mistakes, but at an organization level, if the keys to your tokens in a freaking GitHub README or repo somewhere, like seriously. So they're basically mining these private repos for secrets that they could then use to pivot into other infrastructure. So GitHub was like, that's the end of that. And they shut that all down, including our integration services, which is understandable, but cool.
Fun. I mean, one of the weird things is like the OAuth tokens give you access like the user has, which means like you get one of those tokens, you get access to the kingdom. That's bad. At least if they were using like the GitHub apps, then it is per application. But I assume that even if you used GitHub apps on, if Heroku used that, for example, those keys are probably still compromised. So those applications are still gone. Maybe not all of them, but however they got a hold of those tokens isn't clear. But yeah, fun times.
So you should definitely check your GitHub security log and just verify that everything on there is from you. I mean, they have the date on here. I mean, it sounds like it kind of started in April, or that's at least when they discovered it. So who knows how long it's been going on, but check your stuff, rotate your keys, change your passwords, all that fun stuff. And if you're using password manager like you should be, it shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Go read those GitHub security logs. Make sure that there's only legitimate things going on there.
So here's a tangent. Do you all know what SIM swapping is?
Is that when you change the mayor in your SimCity town?
No, but that was good. I
change your SIM cards in your phone.
Yeah. So SIM swapping is basically like, if you think about it, a lot of stuff in terms of like your security comes to your phone, aka 2FA stuff. So one simple way to get access to your 2FA tokens is that they do something called SIM swapping. SIM swapping is like a valid thing that your phone provider does, was basically like, hey, I want the contents of this SIM card transferred to another phone. But what these attackers have gotten really good at is like, one of the main ways was they were just convincing the operator on the other line that, no, this is me, even though it's not that person. And they were getting them to swap their SIM card to a phone that the attacker owned. Your whole phone now is on someone else's phone. So they control your number. They get all your text messages, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's a very common way, is like going straight to the provider and trying to convince them to do it. But that's getting a lot harder. So I found out, I think this is amazing. It's called packing, I think. And what packing is, especially at T-Mobile, apparently is a big thing for T-Mobile stores, is basically all the managers at T-Mobile have a tablet that they can use to like swap SIM cards and all this other stuff. And basically it's like an admin for doing this. So if you get access to this tablet and their account and this administrator account, you can SIM swap as many numbers as you want, as quickly as you want before they like shut it down. So apparently there's this thing that's become a thing where you sprint into a T-Mobile store, yank the tablet out of the employee's hand, and then dip.
You sprint into a T-Mobile
yeah.
store, huh?
You do a quick sprint.
And then
They did merge.
Yeah. And then you just merge yourself on out the door. You got about 10 minutes before they can call the security and lock the tablet and lock the account. So in that 10 minutes, the attacker basically has like that small window of when the runner, because of course they don't do it themselves. They pay some poor bastard $200 to do this, even though they're bearing like the brunt of like the risk, to run into the store, run back out with the tablet and give it to you. And in that time when people have given you all the numbers that they want, and you're basically selling it. So like as soon as you get the tablet, you start SIM swapping all these numbers. And then those people use them to like, attack your crypto, attack your bank, attack all your accounts, your email, et cetera, et cetera.
They're definitely attacking my crypto.
Well, that's where it's kind of easiest to do it now. So I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting. There's like all the security in place can't stop a teenager from running in your store, yanking the tablet out of your hand and then running out.
So how would you stop that from happening?
Taser. No, like number one, maybe the tablet should not be in the storefront. You should use this in the back room or something, or they need to do better locking of them, or I don't know. You have to swipe a card to enter the T-Mobile store. I don't know.
They need
they're trying.
They need to be using 2FA on their application.
Yeah. But I just thought that was really interesting. Yeah. Like while we were on the subject of attacks.
I wonder if any of the beacons kind of stuff where it's like detecting where you're like, if you're in proximity of whatever, right. It could be like, yep, it left the store. It's shut off. That'd be kind of awesome if they could have it. You'd have to be in like the parking spot right in front of the door to be able to use it. And then it'd be like, well, we'll just wait for the cops.
Yeah, that is actually really smart. And I know this was a big problem for T-Mobile. So I haven't researched how they've addressed it, but I know that they were trying to figure out how to do it. Especially the first thing is obviously training, right? Train your employees. Like, how can we minimize this threat as quickly as possible and the scope of it?
Yeah. And you probably know all this firsthand experience from your teenage years, right?
Yeah. I've SIM swapped a few people. Wait, is that illegal? Should I not admit that? I'm just kidding. I've not done that.
You ever run into a store and ripped an iPad out of someone's hands?
That, on the other hand, is like my favorite thing to do on the weekends. When it's a beautiful weekend here in Phoenix, I just love heading to the T-Mobile store.
Or Adidas.
Yeah, but I don't yank tablets.
You go back into the T-Mobile store and use that $200 to get your new phone or something.
Well, the money that people can get for these SIM swaps for T-Mobile is like $10K.
Oh, that's insane. I mean, it's probably very, very targeted. So if you're going to do that, you're not going to SIM swap some random number. You're going to know that dude has some Coinbase account and you need that specific phone number and whatever. So,
yep, exactly. And so they do all this research prior, and then basically they just give the person who's going to do this attack all the numbers basically beforehand. And going to Coinbase actually had a vulnerability where if you had the username and password without the 2FA, if you had the username and password, you could see how much money someone had in their Coinbase account. Ooh. So that was one big way they were doing it. There's a lot of work if you haven't figured this out already. There's a lot of people involved in this. Like they've already done the work to like get your username and password and like do all this research and reconnaissance on you. That's probably someone else. And then there's someone who had to like find your password, probably like decode it from a dump. And then there's all this stuff of cracking it. All that has to go down. Someone's got to go in and surveil the store and figure out, because the iPads or whatever they're using have username and password on them. So they have to social engineer the administrator to that tablet, and then they have to go yank the tablet. At the end of all of this, you have to launder this money if it's not crypto, right? So there's a lot. Yeah. This is a process, but $10 million payout. I mean,
people are definitely willing to do stuff for that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you reminded me of when I was in high school and college and stuff. I wanted to get into application security and stuff. And I remember being like, in high school, we watched the guy. He went into the secret menu on like the vending machine, and we were like, oh my God, there's a secret menu. So we like go online and start researching like how to enter that and whatever. And like never knew that that was a thing. And then you see the guy do it and you're like, oh yeah, of course there is. There's got to be some way he can see how much it sold in the past week and whatever else, the inventory and that stuff and how much it made. And it makes you like realize just how many details like that, like being able to see someone's amount of money in their Coinbase account is a very, very important thing you want to keep secure. But like you could easily make some mistake, especially with a company like, well, you think about this, like Coinbase or GitHub or any big company like that. Can you imagine how many attackers they have at all times? It's got to be thousands of people.
Constantly, I'm sure.
It's got to be insane.
The thing that was also interesting about Coinbase is like, because 2FA, they have like a lot of things like locked under 2FA. Like you can't see this without 2FA. You can't transfer money without 2FA, right? That makes sense. One thing they also had locked under 2FA is you could only see the last 2 digits of your phone number. And I thought that was really interesting because if the attacker has your phone number, then they can SIM swap you, right? So they're even locking that down. So it's like thinking of like all the entry points that an attacker could gain to your system or your user's account, and then therefore potentially your system, or they could just pivot onto somewhere else. Your emails could be hashing emails and stuff is a good idea. Maybe, hiding phone numbers and all this stuff.
And then the complexity of, okay, grandma signs up for a Coinbase account because she saw it on TV. And then she forgets her email or password or something and doesn't know how to get into her account. And then they gotta have high security in general, but then you still have, which is one of my like pain points I don't know if will ever really be figured out by crypto, which is the fraud and customer support aspect of things. Like when something goes wrong, you don't want to just be out your $10 million. At least banks and credit card companies and stuff are kind of there for helping with that. But yeah, then you got to have some sort of, okay, grandma, we got to send you like, you send us your driver's license and whatever else. But then how do you make that process secure too?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. If they can get into your email, into your phone number, there's no limit. It's just like constant battle. But it's interesting in that almost all of these attacks, there's always a human weakness that originates from like the exploit, because like for them to like even get to this point, they have to have figured out your password. So that means that your password was in a dump and that you never updated password. You're using the same password everywhere and someone else exploited a different system. And the biggest one is obviously social engineering. So it's like, no matter what you do, your people are always the biggest vulnerability. Your users and your staff are the biggest vulnerability.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that like no one ever talks about, I'm sure, because Amazon support and whatever probably gets abused like crazy. And when you do have an actual issue, they want it to be a smooth process. So they like give you money back or whatever. But then I'm sure that that's just a constant thing that some people are like, oh, we're going to just ask for money back all the time and then make a salary from refunds or whatever from stolen accounts or something. Yeah. It's definitely one of those things that is, as a developer, like you take for granted a lot of times because you're like, we just need to make it work in the first place. But making it work and making it secure is a whole other challenge.
So I don't know. I guess the point of all of this is like Jason mentioned that we're using Brakeman at Podia. That's not the only thing we're doing, right? At bare minimum, when the Rails survey went around, I think last year, they surveyed like how many of you are using some sort of security tool to like monitor your code base, and the result was staggeringly low. And it's like, come on, people, do the bare minimum at least, because if you get attacked, you're gonna wish, because what you're about to go through is going to be expensive. It's going to potentially ruin your company, not to mention your job and your reputation and, all these other things. It's like, come on, put in at least like the bare minimum, at least add Brakeman. Listener, you listening with your app on GitHub, that's got GitHub Actions right there with a simple, easy way to add Brakeman security. Do it. Please.
Yeah, and what's the other tool? Bundler Audit or whatever.
Bundler Audit's a good one.
Make sure your gems are up to date for security updates.
Like always updating your gems with Dependabot or Deptfoo. That's one you should do. Subscribing to Rails security releases. There's RSS feed. There's things you can do, and if you're doing nothing, you're wrong. You're bad. You're the problem. Fix that.
I definitely think Brakeman's a very good one to do. It's just, it can be pretty painful sometimes to figure out the solution for a random thing, or it's got false positives, which are like, I would rather, in this case, you would rather have a false positive than a false negative because it's security. So
absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes it will add more time and effort to your process. And I feel like that's what you see with like people complain about Twitter or Slack or whatever, where they grow really, really fast and then they slow down. Guess what they're doing a lot of times? They're doing security stuff, and like they definitely could add more features and fix things and whatever, but a lot of that's around security. Like there's a lot of reason why the edit button never came to Twitter. It seems obvious, but there was a bunch of stuff I saw happening on Facebook that like somebody would post something like obscene and then get a bunch of reactions and then go edit their original post and make it like something really nice. And then all these people, appeared to be like freaking out about whatever was posted. And like, how are you going to do that on Twitter? Things change so fast and there's so much activity. The concept of an edit button is really like a security problem in a way, because you can then abuse what happens. If you have to delete your tweet, then it's these replies to something nobody can see. And that's much better than the kind of crazy content stuff people can mess with. So that is a whole rabbit hole of things to think about. And it only gets more and more complicated every day too.
Yeah, you've got me thinking now, what if our former president was allowed to edit his tweets? I'm sure there's some things in there, but yeah, that the big reason, because I've heard them speak about this, is that they don't want you to be able to modify history basically and be like, obviously it's annoying when you like make a typo. Sometimes you catch Ted Cruz looking at like funky images and stuff. And so there's like this other component of like, we want to like either delete it, but don't change it because the whole thing changes and you can lose context. And I don't know. People need to stop complaining on Twitter.
I have nothing of value to add. I'll just complain on the podcast.
I'll just tweet about it and then edit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, people need to stop subtweeting on the internet.
That's true. It's a plague. We gotta do something about the kids, man.
I just want to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Honey Badger. They are not only my favorite error and uptime monitoring service, but they've also added several awesome new features. One of those being the public status pages. So it makes perfect sense that your error and uptime monitoring tool can have a public status page for you to communicate any downtime outages with your customers. So whether US East 1 is down or you forgot to add a configuration file, Honey Badger is there for you to help communicate any downtime or outages with your customers. Plus, they've also added Ssl Certificate Monitoring. So like many of us use these days, Let's Encrypt certificates expire every 90 days. And if for some reason you're a week away from expiring an SSL certificate, they could let you know ahead of time so that you can take care of it without any outages for your customers. Plus, managing the errors and things inside of Honey Badger has gotten even easier with Honey Badger Actions, which you can use to automatically assign errors to yourself or another team member, add tags to different error classes, and more. And they also have batch actions, which you can use on the search results to help manage your backlog of work to do. So Honey Badger is the place to check out for error and uptime monitoring, and it's only getting better. So check them out at honeybadger.io.
Okay, so I have something kind of Ruby-ish to talk about.
Oh, no.
I know it's surprising for this podcast, but before I do that, we should stop and take a moment and shout out those who have reached out and said that they left us reviews, because, and the offer still stands, if you find value in this podcast and you would like to express that, in the form of a review, we are willing to express our appreciation for your appreciation. So
Of our appreciation of your appreciation.
And it helps us to get advertisers and to show our advertisers that we're bringing them value, and it will help us buy more NFTs. So please leave us reviews.
I have something about NFTs, but we can talk about that in a minute. First, Alex MacArthur at AMACARTHUR on Twitter. Thank you for your kind review. Outcast Shadow at Jesse09369211. Thank you for your kind review. And then I think you have the other ones.
Yes, I do. We've got X Getty. If I pronounce your name wrong, I'm so sorry, but yep, they gave us a great review. And then this one is before our offer, but I'm going to mention it anyway because it was so nice. A Sobering. Thank you so much for your all 5-star reviews. And if you leave us a 2-star review and don't say why, we will find your IP address.
Andrew's
Sim
going to
swap
come and
you.
rip out an iPad from your hands.
Yeah. Take your Adidas.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for the reviews. From like when we started, it was just like, hey, we're going to hang out and, record audio and see what happens. And look at us now. We're still doing the exact same thing, but it's a lot of fun. So we appreciate everybody that listens.
We kind of glossed over this earlier, but I was going to say, and if you want to see us do it live,
yeah, exactly.
Live in 4K, we will be at RailsConf doing first a live podcast recording, which the amazing Brittany Martin, there's our Brittany Martin reference schedule.
Are you implying real life is 4K?
Real life 4K, yeah. HD, 4D, 4K.
And if you have bad eyesight, real life might be like 360p or something.
Right,
but we're sorry for
like a buffering delay in my brain, but we'll see how it goes. In addition to that, we are giving a talk that Jason is the architect, mastermind, and creator of.
That's it.
And we will be talking about this podcast. So
we'll be talking about how you too should start a podcast by learning from all of our mistakes.
We should have invited Paul to edit us live.
Stop. No, don't say that.
Andrew's cursing again. Rewind.
Every time Andrew starts to curse, Paul just goes, beep, beep, louder than Andrew can talk.
God, that would be what I really need to bring my life full circle is a human bleep. But yeah, we'll be there. And so if you want to see us live, come to our talk or come to the live podcast recording. We'd love to meet you. And yeah. And if you don't see it live, you can either listen to the recording or you can watch the video when it gets released. We hope to see everyone who will be there. There.
Can't wait. It's been way too long. I know you went to RubyConf, Jason. Did you go to RubyConf too?
Yes.
Andrew?
That is where Jason recruited me.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. How big was that? Like 600 people or something?
That sounds right. I have no idea.
There's some people there.
It was pretty packed, yeah.
I think there was like 2,000 at RailsConf in 2019 or something. So be real curious to see how big RailsConf is in person this year. I think a lot of people are missing it. I sure was.
They're missing it by not going.
Both.
Because it's
like,
been
you're missing it and that's why you're going, or you're missing it and not going.
Or you want to see us. Or you don't want to see us. Yeah, you'd be missing us.
Cool.
Tamales.
Too spicy.
So back to Ruby. Actually, it's relevant. So like part of starting a podcast is being vulnerable, which I feel like I've just done this whole episode by screwing up words. But also that means asking questions that may sound really dumb. Is it better?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Well, I have my answer. House divided. Is it better for an empty form field to create an empty string in a database or a nil value?
It should be nil. And if you think it should be an empty string, you're wrong. But I want to know why you think that.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I think it should be nil, but I'm pretty sure if the present is there, Rails is going to put an empty string there.
Yes, you're right. It's also annoying for drop down values because if they select the empty value, Yeah, it's just an empty value. And you're like, what?
Yeah, because there's not like a built-in mechanism. There's like the one for allow blank or whatever for like associated records.
Right.
Or something like that.
Optional
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But yeah, not like the attributes themselves, because they don't even really get a definition anywhere. You get validations. You're not writing attribute ID as an integer, and you don't have like an attribute, whatever, allow blank or like cast empty string to nil or
So-
whatever.
That's the thing is like, so I'm working on Job Boardly, right? And I have a case where this field, it has a check constraint in the database. So like, no, it doesn't have a check constraint. It can be null, but I want to check the presence of the value to know if it should render or not. And I can't just be like, if job.value or whatever, I have to say job.value.present, which is just one of those things that annoys me because I don't want a bunch of empty strings. I just want this to be null.
Do you ever write like a before validation and just clean up those? Because that's like what I've done in the past most of the time. Is just a before validation that will run and clean up nonsense. But I always feel like I shouldn't have to write this.
Bingo. I've done that. I've used a gem that does that. I've just said, F it. I don't care. I'll just accept the string. But it all goes back to, I don't want the
And
string
you've
there.
said, oh, I'll move to Laravel if you guys keep making me do stuff like this.
You know what? You know what?
The grass
Hanami.
may be greener. Maybe.
Hanami is an interesting thing to bring up because I'm pretty sure that the way they use like validations and stuff at the controller level would help things like this situation.
I ran into another similar thing the other day that was a little just annoyance. You know how when you have a has many relationship, you can say like has many and then do a where and like first or initialize or first or create or whatever. There is no equivalent for that on a has one, which seems a little bit weird because you have to then say like whatever dot first or whatever dot build. And so it gets to be annoying to say like current user dot billing address or current user build billing address. And I felt like they should be able to chain a method on that's like, or like have a method generated that's billing address or build or create or something. And I was like, we have that because of the associations on has many's, but not on the has ones. And I thought that was like a strange little, not required by any means, but a like rough edge that could use some polish. Just like, I think more importantly, the empty string thing would be, I would find that very useful, like to have that instead. But yeah, that makes me wonder too, like, do you guys know how when you have a date select or a date time select where it's got 5 select boxes and it submits those all and then interprets that as parsing a time, there's a step in active record at some point that, you know, it's going to be taking that from the params and then either the params is parsing that into one thing, or I can't remember. It's been so long since I used one of those, but one place in there is taking those 5 attributes for params and merging them into one. And it makes you wonder, like, there's probably a place that you could do a similar thing for an empty string if you wanted to like just check, is it blank? And if so, set it to nil.
You could do find all and pass it the symbol present and dot map nil. Seb showed me this yesterday. Basically, we have an address and like there could be nil things in this address, right? We don't want to display that. So what he did, which I thought was really smart, was he took an array of these items that we care about and he did dot find all and passed present question mark as a symbol with the ampersand and then mapped off of that. And I thought that was really smart way to do that.
Yeah, like filter those.
Is there a technical reason I'm missing why that should be an empty string?
I bet there is. If Raphael is listening, please tell us. I'm sure there is like a real reason why this is a thing, because there's no way that we're the first big brain buffoons that have been like, why don't do this?
It's probably the similar reason why like you can have a Boolean, but it doesn't have to be a filled out value. right?
Right.
Like it's a separate state to have a nil and a Boolean, and it's a separate state to have a nil and an empty string and an actual value in there. But it's one of those where you want to be able to be like, this should never be an empty string or something.
I mean, I don't even think you could change that at this point. There's probably so much functionality that relies on the fact that that is an empty string.
I think part of the, stuff is like the browser has to submit something for it, because if it didn't submit anything, it just leaves it out. And like Rails wouldn't know the difference between, do we want to unset this value or do we want to just leave it alone? And that's, I know, at least one of the reasons why like a checkbox has the like hidden field and the checkbox. So you know that like it's either on or off instead of just don't update whatever's in the database. So there are a lot of tricky things like that magically a lot of them have been polished pretty nicely. Not everything, but for what it's worth, a lot of these things are awfully easy compared to where they could be. Thank God we're not dealing with checkboxes and whatnot ourselves.
No, totally. Like, it's just one of those little things that came up this week.
Yeah.
That like doesn't really cause me a lot of trouble, except in this one little edge case. And it's like,
I feel like that would be one of those things where like if you had the attribute validations in the controller level, like Laravel, where you could just say, look, on this controller, if you send me a empty string, then like ignore it, discard it. But you could have another controller that's like, hey, we want to save that instead. And you want to update the record in this case or whatever. And like being able to differentiate those actions. But it always feels very not kosher for me to ever modify the params in the controller. Like I don't ever want to do that unless maybe it's like some default query or some value or something that I'd try to fill in. But even then it doesn't feel right.
well, see, we do that with active storage when we want to delete a record. We have like custom mixins we've written that look for _ destroy for those type of attachments. And it feels wrong. Like you said, like you don't want to do that. But I think that's just the way Rails is. The model is the source of truth for most things like validations and anything with a database record.
Why does it feel wrong to y'all? Because for me, like at CodeFound, we did a lot of tapping into the params to edit them or add new ones.
Tapping into it feels like a violation. And like, I don't have a good reason why.
I mean, part of me wants to preserve the params that came in with the request, so I don't want to modify them necessarily. Like I would maybe rather set an instance variable to params destroy or the default value and then use the instance variable everywhere else or something.
Right.
Like there's some aspect of that to me that feels dirty. Like the request came in with this stuff. I don't want to like mutilate it and then something down the road uses it and didn't expect that or something.
Right, but why? Because your params should only be used in your controller.
Well, it's the same thing like when you call a method. I don't really want to go modify the arguments that you passed in. And I would rather take the argument you passed in, have the original value saved somewhere, and then like a variable that's like, okay, we're going to upcase that. And it's like the title.upcase is assigned to a new title variable, which we use or something like that, just so that like we have it if we need it or whatever. I don't know.
Like keeping params like this immutable thing is the source of truth that came from the user. We can duplicate it, modify it. I don't know. Modifying it in place feels wrong. Duplicating it and modifying it doesn't necessarily feel wrong, but it feels extra.
Yeah.
Save memory.
Yeah.
Just do it in place.
Lose your sanity. Do it in place.
There's a few times recently that like Colin's doing a video on assert difference in mini tests and explaining like how it works behind the scenes. And it's one of the examples that I noticed that the method accepts multiple method arguments. It has different signatures, like link to it for is a good example. The first argument is either the title or it's a URL if you give it a block. And to me, that's one of those things where I'm like, I really wish that Ruby had pattern matching for the functions. Like I could just define two separate link tos, because when you read the source code for link to or assert difference or whatever, it's like, well, the first variable is title or linkable or something for the link to example. And then it's like, got to check to see, was there a block passed? If so, then we'll assign this to title and whatever. It ends up getting messier where you're like, if we just had the ability to define 2 link to methods with different arguments, then that implementation would be much, much cleaner, which would be kind of cool. But it's also got its own trade-offs there too. But
Doesn't Ruby have pattern matching now?
Not at like the method level.
Oh.
It's like pattern
that was a
matching within
proposed thing
case
or something.
statements. Let me tell you about our Lord and Savior Elixir. It has
Okay.
pattern
Yeah,
matching.
that's what I'm thinking about.
I know a little Elixir.
It's,
Or I think Haskell and other languages have the same.
that's big brain energy right there. No, so like the pattern matching is one of, I know there's a lot of reasons to use Elixir, but it's one of the ones that was like a quick sell to me. Was like, oh, you could define the same method and just based on, at a simple level, the different arguments, it knows which one to use. You don't have to have one method that takes an ungodly amount of arguments and has a bunch of conditionals inside. But then it takes it further and it's like, oh, you can actually match on the value. So like if you're checking, I should run this function if the age is greater than 21, or I can run this function, the age is not greater than 21. I know that.
Really cool way to pull out conditionals like
Yes.
that and
Yes.
put them in the code where it doesn't even need to know about it. Yeah. That stuff is really interesting sometimes because I feel like my agenda a lot of days is like, how do I just get rid of these damn conditionals? Like, I don't want any if statements if I can. Eventually, I'd love to remove them all.
Yep. Pattern matching in Elixir is cool. And obviously, like Elixir has much greater benefits for people. But at a core level, that's one of the things that interests me. Because like, oh, I could abuse it, sure. But I could also do some like really good damage with it. Extracting conditionals out in a bunch of functions. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I think that would be one of the neat things to have. I'm sure that there's a lot of complexity on implementing that and whatever else. You have to go then inside Ruby. Oh, we called this function. Does it need a block or not? And then how do you fit that in the pattern matching syntax? I guess the ampersand block could be detected in the arguments or something and whatever else. But yeah, that's one of the ones where I'm like, it would be nice if I could just have 2 separate link to methods that took different arguments and then did different things. And then no conditionals in there, no kind of casting stuff to try and make them work the same.
Would you say pattern matching is the missing link to solving your problems?
We should just start a podcast full of puns.
I call it a day, dude. Hot takes and hot wings with Jason Charnes.
I've decided, I don't know if we've talked about this, I've decided just to double down on the shitty jokes this year.
You should, because I really enjoy them.
I gave a
They make
talk
me laugh so much. They're so bad. They make me laugh so much.
I gave an unexpected talk at the podium retreat that was just a bunch of really bad jokes.
And I was laughing my ass off.
I have a
I didn't even
surprise.
get half of them.
I didn't either. I have a surprise for y'all. And that is
Doing another talk.
no, better than that. During this podcast, I finished 4 of our NFTs.
Nice.
Oh boy.
I
See if I
can't
can
wait
see
to argue with
here.
people on Twitter about this.
We're going to retire
So I
next
just
week.
need you to mint them, whatever the hell that means.
Good. I will learn what minting is and then.
They're in the Discord channel.
All right. I will get some gas
Starting-
and mint these babies up.
What the hell?
Starting price is $1 million,
Yeah. A bajilli.
$1 grillion.
A gorillion. Oh my God. I could finally buy what I've always wanted.
What is that?
A Korean steakhouse.
Okay, see ya.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
I hate everything.
Should we just start over?
You want to start the whole thing over?
I mean, we haven't really talked anything of value.
I mean, we can if you want to.